Hi, I'm Susan Bratton, and I'm here today with Sheri Winston, one of our personal life media, sex, love, and intimacy coaches. Hi, Sheri.
Hi, Sis.
Thank you so much for getting together with me today and talking about who you are and how you can help people. And also, I know that you have three stories for us. You've got a single female who's not yet enjoyed her first orgasm. A
Well, she
couple.
hadn't when she came to me.
Oh, she
She
hadn't when
had,
she came to you, exactly. And now she's come for you. Well, not exactly. We'll work on that. A couple with a mismatched libido. That's a big issue for many of our followers and fans. And a Vietnam vet who had some challenges trusting women and healing some betrayal. And before we get into that, I just want to unpack Sheri's title because she is one of the most well-educated coaches that I've probably ever met. And before I even do that, I want to tell you about the two books that she's written. Her latest book is Succulent SexCraft. And Sheri, would you hold up Women's Anatomy of Arousal? This is probably, I don't know, my all-time favorite book ever in the universe for understanding how to have great sex. And it was an ASECT award-winning book, comes highly recommended, as does Succulent SexCraft. So no matter how you engage with Sheri, do it, whether you start out reading her books or you take the time to book her for a coaching session or a series of sessions to help you one-on-one with any issues that are coming up for you around love, sex, and intimacy. So, Sheri, you have all these letters, RN, LMT, after your name, and that's really a lot of what has informed who you are and how you help people. Can you just unpack those and do them in a way where you're like, okay, well, this one means this, and this is how come I can help people with this?
all right, I'll do that. So, I'm a certified nurse midwife and gynecology practitioner. So that's an advanced practice nurse. And for really 25 years, my focus, my mission and calling was about helping women birth. I also did gynecology, so it was about helping women be healthy in their reproductive systems. I'm also a childbirth educator. I was a doula. I'm a licensed massage therapist, and a few other things that I probably didn't even throw in there. But basically, that was really all about helping women have amazing births and have great relationships with their own gynecological health. Now, that touched on sexuality in lots of ways that I think would be obvious to people, and then a lot of ways that aren't so obvious. And I'll give a little summary, but I learned to have better sex by learning how to help women have better births. And I didn't even realize that for about 10 years that I was doing this. And then when I started realizing, I also started studying sacred sexuality disciplines like Tantra and Taoist sexuality practices in Native American. And I'd been studying holistic healing this whole time. So all of that comes together and enables me to help people with sexual issues that do have more of a connection to the body. So helping people with issues about pain or surgical issues. So definitely when I started doing this work when I was still a clinician, my focus was on more medical, physical issues. And of course, now that I've been a sex teacher for 15 years and working in this realm, I really help. I think of it now as midwifing people's sexuality. That's what I do now. I help people birth their sexuality.
One of the things you talk about is this idea of holistic sexuality. You might have even trademarked that, I think. And I want to know what that means to you, or I want to know what that means to someone considering using you for coaching.
Well, the thing about our sexuality is it's not just an activity that goes on behind a locked bedroom door. Our sexuality is part of who we are. It's part of everything that makes us us. So everything that's ever happened to you in your life is part of your sexuality. How you were raised, your beliefs, the stories that you hold, all of that is part of your sexuality. Every experience you've had, not just the first fumbling in the backseat of a car experiences. I mean, from the moment you were getting born to how you were touched when you were a baby is part of who you are. Your relationship with your body, what you saw modeled, your ideas about gender, about who you are, how you communicate or don't talk about sexual issues. All of that's part of your sexuality. So when I'm working with people, I'm looking at all of those components. Is there a physical component? And that's an important thing to understand, because sometimes there is a physical issue that's part of what's going on. Sometimes it's more about emotional or psychological or spiritual, but none of those things are separate. So I really look at it's about everything and the whole person, and really the whole person in relation to our whole world.
A lot of times people feel like it's their partner's problem, but their partner won't come to the table to get help. How do you handle situations where someone thinks, all right, well, there's nothing I can do, because I know we're going to talk about the mismatched libido. That's a good example. How can you help someone like that?
Well, the bottom line is our relationship with our sexuality begins with ourselves. So my relationship with my sexuality begins with me. And it's like a musician. I have to play my instrument, and how I play my instrument is going to influence how I play duets. But my skills and my, whether I'm adept with my own instrument, and by instrument, I don't just mean our sexual parts. I mean our mind, our body, our relationship skills, our interpersonal skills, all of those things are going to affect the duet. Another example would be like a dance. If you're dancing with somebody else and you change how you're moving, you change your steps, they're going to change their steps too. Yeah. And what I've noticed in situations like that, where one partner starts coming to see me, the other partner isn't, it's not uncommon within a very short amount of time to have that partner change their mind and decide to join in, because they're seeing the person who's coming creating changes for themselves. The dynamic between them is shifting, and now they're starting to get curious and interested and more willing to come to the table, because they're not feeling necessarily so blamed. I think some people don't want to come when they're in a couple because they think, oh, I'm just going to get blamed for everything. And then we're going to go talk to somebody and they're going to blame me too. Yeah. And they start to see, because they're seeing how their partner is relating and responding and changing, they're going to go, oh, that doesn't seem like that's what's going on. And then they become much more willing to kind of go and be in this coaching relationship where they can start making some changes themselves.
Yeah. Well, and that leads me to the next point that I really wanted to bring up with you, and that is the idea of solo sex and how important it is, because you said you start with yourself. And I know in the first story of this single woman who hadn't, until she met you and started working with you, experienced an orgasm, that when you wrote Succulent SexCraft, so much of the book was devoted to knowing yourself and loving yourself and taking care of yourself first. That I'd love for you to go ahead and tell us the story of this woman that you helped, because you're very, very conscious, and you have a lot of remedies for people who are single, or who don't have a partner right now, or who, you know, whatever, they're just feeling like their sex life is not even available to them because they don't have a partner. And I love the way you shift that thinking. So please tell us your story.
Well, you know, I have a little aside, which is that the phrase solo sex is so significant. I actually had somebody come up to me and say, you changed my life with one phrase. And I'm like, what did I say? And she said, you used the solo sex. Yeah. And she said, that just reframed everything for me. So even when people are partnered, if you want to learn to play your own instrument, you want to get better at sex, you have to do some rehearsals, some practice, experimenting by yourself with yourself, even when you are partnered. Now, this woman at this point was not partnered. She had a number of partners. She's a lovely middle-aged woman, and had had a number of relationships, and she'd said when she was younger, she sort of blamed the guy. She wasn't having orgasms because clearly they were doing something wrong. After a number of partners and relationships, she realized that it wasn't them, it was her. And she was not in a relationship currently, and realized that this was probably the best time to work on this. That by the time she was going to be in another relationship, she wanted to be on the other side of this issue. And we worked together, and she discovered her path to orgasm, and then learned how to expand that path to orgasm. And the last I heard from her, she is currently in a relationship, which is pretty exciting, and having wonderful sex with a partner. So this is pretty fulfilling for me. Yeah. But whether she never had another partner or not, helping women find their path to orgasm is so important to me. And I think for a lot of women, the first reframe is that there's nothing wrong with them. They're not broken. There's just some stuff they haven't learned. It's just like speaking French or playing tennis or playing the guitar. There's nothing wrong with you who don't know how to do those things. But if you want to learn them, you can. It's a lot hard. You can't like go to the, Google, you can go find a tennis teacher, but it's hard to find an orgasm teacher, right? So that's what a common thing that I've done working with women who have not found their orgasm, or it's not easily accessible. It's a challenge for them. Or sometimes women who can have an orgasm under a very specific set of circumstances, but would like to expand that. Yes. So they can have orgasms with partners or in different positions or with intercourse or that sort of thing. So there's lots of potential orgasmic learning to be done.
For men, what are the most common things that you help men do with regard to orgasmic challenge? Men that have trouble ejaculating inside their partner or what have you. What are some of the things you've been helping men with recently?
Well, that's a big category too. I'm starting to see younger men whose challenge is that they've imprinted on porn and then are having performance issues and anxiety and connection issues with real live actual women. So I've been seeing that. I see a number of men who are getting older and are having challenges because their erections are not what they used to be. And they're now starting to have anxiety about that because things are changing. And we don't have a lot of cultural information that really helps men learn to deal with those changes and how you can amplify your sexual energy or what physical things you can do to enhance that. I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about other sorts of things. So that's common. And then I think the other most common thing is men who are having challenges connecting with and pleasuring women. And that's a big one. Because let's face it, they didn't come with the instructions pre-printed in their brain about what turns women on. And a lot of people feel like it's your partner's job, right? A lot of women feel that way. Right. My partner should give me an orgasm. And so one of the things I work with a lot is understanding the different energy systems that men and women tend to have, which play out in how we get turned on and what works for us. So we were talking earlier about a couple that had come to me with very, very different relationships to sex and desire and libido. She didn't really want to have it at all. He wanted to have it a lot, like every day would have been good for him. And she was having sex with him. She hadn't cut him off, but she wasn't really into it. She wasn't really enjoying it that much. She certainly wasn't initiating. She didn't have orgasms. Right? She didn't have orgasms, and he was always in the position of kind of like the puppy begging to go for a walk. Like, please now, can we now? And she was also pushing him away because every time he wanted to get close, she was feeling like he wanted sex. And so it was really creating lots of challenges for them. And one of the things that can be so useful for couples like that is to understand the energies, what I call the pussies and puppies school of love. The pussy cat is usually the woman, and pussy cats and puppy dogs, you play with them differently. And since our cultural model of sex is the puppy dog model, the male-centered model, he was being a puppy dog and doing the things that make puppy dogs happy. And in other words, diving into her crotch too soon, because he would have loved nothing more than to have her just dive in and go to town, and spend an hour playing with his cock. And he would be doing what he thought she would like, because that's what he would like. And so a big piece of working with this couple, besides helping them understand that dynamic, is then helping them learn to play a different way, helping him learn, how do you play with a pussycat? How do you make a pussycat happy? And also helping her learn how to connect to her own erotic energy. Great. And sometimes that means giving them some space, right? And they had a dynamic where if she was ever feeling sexual at all, she wasn't going to self-pleasure because she was feeling guilty. So if she had any sexual, she would be like, oh, okay, we can have sex. Yeah. She would give him the okay, because I have a little bit of energy going on. So one of the things I worked with him was have some energy going on by yourself. Have sex by yourself. She's like, oh, but that would be selfish.
I would be cheating my husband out of my libido.
Right? Right? He wants it so much. And I assured them that this was a phase, but that it was really important for her to learn to run and enjoy her own sexual energy. And that was going to give her more sexual energy, so that when she was really full of energy, she was going to be the one to go jump on him. There you have that.
Can a guy work with you even if his wife won't come to the coaching?
Well, the great thing about coaching is that it really is about your relationship with yourself. So if you start changing, if you start growing and healing and learning new things, then you're going to be different. You're going to be behaving differently. Right. And an intimate partnership is like you're dancing together. And you're in this dance, and one person steps back, the other person has to step forward. When you change how you're moving, your partner changes how they're moving too. And so what I've seen is when one partner comes to me for some sessions, they get clear on some stuff, they work on some things, and then they're being different. Then their partner's just going, wait a minute, this is interesting. I'm liking this. I'm liking how my partner is being different. And then they start wanting to come and find out what's going on and join in. I think also, partners might worry that somehow they're being blamed. So if there's that dynamic where one partner is going, oh, it's all your fault. Yeah. I think they worry that if they go to a coach, that the coach is going to go, he's right, or she's right. It is all your fault. And I think what they start to get when they see their partner behaving differently with more insight and more awareness is that this isn't about blame or anybody doing anything wrong. It's about learning and growing. And I think that makes it more comfortable for them to go, well, let me come and see what's happening here.
I also think that if a man has a mismatched libido with his wife, which is such a common situation in my world because I wrote a program called Revive for Drive. So I'm in the passion patch, and men are naturally coming to me because I have some solutions they can work themselves. And one of the reasons I wanted to have a coaching program and have you help my guys that have come to me is that a lot of times they can't make the changes on their own. Revive or Drive is not enough for them. They need more one-on-one support. They're still feeling around in the dark, and then they're getting shut down. Like, oh, you don't do that. Why are you doing? They get rejected again. They don't feel, often because they're not starting at the first step. They're trying to still just get sex. They're trying to use what they've learned to just get sex, I have to say. But it really does help to have someone break it down who's on your side. And when they start making those behavioral changes, their wife doesn't reject that. Then she starts he starts to get the responses he's looking for, like there's some hope. I think for so many men, they feel like there's not even any hope anymore, that they're going to have to get divorced or cheat on their wife because they've given up even hoping. And I want to say that you don't have to give up hope, that every woman is born sexual, and once you can find a way to get underneath all of that negative programming that happened from her family, her church, our society, the media, and the fact that you did the best you could do, but it wasn't maybe the things that she needed, getting help from Sheri to understand what those steps are can show you some really fast positive shifts that make you feel alive again. That's what I think is the best thing about having a coach holding your hand one-on-one, and then maybe incorporating your partner into that. So you have another story of a Vietnam vet who had a lot of post-traumatic stress and other issues. We have a lot of men who've served in wars, who've been through things, whether it's literally gone to war or been abused or shamed. We have women who've been abused and shamed, so many people are, that they're starting at such a deficit because of what's happened to them, that they don't know how to get out of it. And yet you're a coach, not a psychiatrist. And so that's an interesting thing that I'd like you to address. It's like, can you really help people who've had all of those things? And how can you do that as a coach different than a therapist or a psychiatrist? That's important for people to understand that distinction, I think.
Well, I think therapy does a lot with looking at the past.
Yes.
And what happened, and minding that, and working through those issues. And I think that's a wonderful thing and really valuable. Yeah. I think the difference between what I do and therapy is I'm not ignoring those things because they play into what's going on, but I'm really looking at where we are now, what the different pieces of it are, and then having a very focused set of intentions about practical things that you're going to do, home play assignments, and then we're going to check in and go from there. So it's very practical. It's very grounded in now and moving forward. And so that's one of the differences. There are some people that I encourage them to also see a therapist. I was working with this man who had some pretty severe post-traumatic stress that he acknowledges he was a Vietnam vet, and nobody knew about those things or talked about them. He thinks it destroyed his marriage. He'd been single for a long time. He'd had some betrayal issues with women because he was playing out some pretty dysfunctional patterns in his relationships. And he was single, and he really wanted a partner. But he was aware now it was time to kind of work on some of these issues. And so it was an interesting mix of his anxiety about kind of getting back in the world of dating, not really trusting women so much anyway, his traumatic history, but in a very, practical way. We worked on these different issues. I also had recommended some things he could do that were some trauma-based healing practices to get elsewhere. So sometimes what I do is go, you need to find somebody who does this kind of embodied therapy to work on getting that trauma out of your body.
Like a here's some experience worker or something. Is that what you recommended for him?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And there's practical things you can do to work on that. And here's some other, now let's talk about meeting women, and let's talk about what happens when you do that, when you meet a woman, and where it goes from there. And then I just, the last session we had, he had met someone and was just floating. He was in that, like, I can't believe I've met this. And so I haven't heard from him since. So I think he's probably doing okay. But it's really about, it's being practical, but it's also about looking at the different pieces and putting together a very individualized plan of how to move from here to where you want to be.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. One last question. Are there any particular thorny
Yeah.
issues that you find you're really good at solving? I know you gave us 3 stories of the kinds of things that you could do, because I'd asked you, tell me about a guy you helped, tell me about a woman you helped, tell me about a couple you helped. But what are some of the things that you're like, oh, goody, this is my favorite problem to solve? Do you have any of those that are like your favorites?
Um, well, I do. I really, really love connecting women with their orgasmic potential.
Great.
So that is definitely really big on my list. I also really love helping men connect to their pleasure potential. A lot of men, they can have an orgasm. That's not an issue. But to help them learn how to have really expanded orgasms is pretty exciting because there's a lot of potential there. And then I think that the stuff that I do with relationships is very powerful for me because, sex is the glue and the lubricant of long-term relationship. And if we want to stay with somebody for a long time, it really helps to be able to have fabulous sex. And if we're not only we're not getting that connection, it can be something that drives people apart. And that can be heartbreaking. So I love really seeing, couples, partners be able to rediscover the excitement, the pleasure, the connection. I work also with a lot of couples who have a sort of a dead bedroom where neither partner is that into sex, or that they know it would be good, but their sex has just kind of fallen off the map. So that's sort of what's being called now the dead bedroom syndrome, where nobody's really into having sex, but they know theoretically it would be a good idea, but it's so much easier to turn the TV on at night.
Yeah.
They've been together and they want to stay together and they realize it's important. So that's another thing I see a lot of.
That makes sense. There's a lot of that going on, and I like it. That's great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving us the time to talk about this. One of my favorite things about you are all of the erotic practices that you know about. And so I can imagine that working with you would be just a lot of fun because it would be such an expansion of your personal vitality. Just doing that, because even just being aware of all your erotic play and practices, even for someone who already felt like they were pretty good in bed and wanted to just have like an off the hook sexuality. So we've been talking a lot about people who have problems and issues and struggles, but there's nothing, if you're an Olympic gold athlete, wrong with having a really good trainer. And sometimes it's those little tweaks that can make a massive amount of difference too. And I think that you're particularly spectacular at that because you've just studied so much of classic embodied wisdom, I guess is what I would call it. You called it the Tantra and the Taoist practices and things like that. And so that's another thing that I want to tell you that's so good about Sheri is that if you're already good and you want to get better, also people who have, who are on the spectrum of their gender, that's another really good area with Sheri. She's quite well practiced in the gender spectrum and fetish and kink and some of those things. So she is not a plain vanilla coach. She's someone you can trust with your most private desires and situations very confidently.
Yeah, that's true. Also, couples and partners who are polyamorous and have any kind of non-traditional, non-monogamy kinds of relationships, which can have its own unique set of challenges and issues. Definitely. So, and same-sex partners, and and I'm very kink-aware and kink-friendly. So, yeah, all of those good things. All of those things.
There's nothing you can't say to Sheri that she hasn't heard and helped people with in the past. That is for sure. So, if this has resonated with you, I would really encourage you to book a 15-minute Get Acquainted call with Sheri. You just put it on her. You get access to her calendar. You can pick your time. You'll fill out a form, and that will give her some foundation information so that when she gets on either the phone or Skype, video or regular with you, she'll be prepared to talk about how to take you from where you are to where you want to go. And thank you so much, Sheri. I really appreciate the conversation and the time that you've given for people to get to know who you are.
Thank you. I love what you do, and I think you're fabulous, and I so appreciate you creating this opportunity for everyone.
My pleasure. You are a gift I love to give people. How lucky am I? All right. We hope we'll connect with you soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. And I'm your host and the CEO of Personal Life Media, Susan Bratton. And you've gotten a chance to meet Sheri Winston, one of our sex, love, and intimacy coaches. Have a great day.